Vincent Marcelli adjusted his Italian silk tie as he surveyed the opulent dining room of Le Bernardin, Las Vegas's most exclusive restaurant. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across mahogany walls lined with priceless art. At 42, Vince commanded respect wherever he went, not just because of his 6'2" frame or piercing green eyes, but because everyone knew he ran the most powerful crime family in Nevada. The Torino proposal boss, Marcus, his bodyguard, leaned in discreetly. "Tell them no. Their territory expansion ends at the Strip." Vince's voice carried the quiet authority of a man who'd never needed to raise it. He lifted his glass of 30-year-old Macallan, savoring the moment of peace. That's when he heard it. "Please, I'm sorry, don't kick me." A woman's voice, desperate and afraid, pierced through the restaurant's refined atmosphere. Vince's blood turned to ice. Across the dining room, near the kitchen entrance, a young Latina waitress lay crumpled on the marble floor. A stocky man in an ill-fitting suit stood over her, his boot raised for another strike. "You stupid bitch, look what you did to my shoes." The man's face was red with rage, spittle flying from his lips. The waitress, Vince glimpsed her name tag reading Isabella, raised trembling hands to protect herself. Her uniform was stained with wine, her dark hair disheveled. Blood trickled from her split lip. Every patron in the restaurant had gone silent, their eyes darting nervously between the scene and their plates. The staff stood frozen, too terrified to intervene. Not Vince. Something primal ignited in his chest, a fury he hadn't felt since his father's murder 22 years ago. This wasn't business. This was personal. "Marcus. Sal." His voice was deadly quiet. Both men immediately flanked him as he stood, his chair sliding back with deliberate precision. The dining room seemed to hold its breath as Vincent Marcelli crossed the floor. His Armani shoes clicked against marble like a countdown. The other diners recognized him. Some paled, others quickly looked away. Even the most powerful businessman in Vegas knew better than to watch a Marcelli operation unfold. The thug raised his boot again, completely oblivious to the approaching storm. "That's enough." Vince's words cut through the air like a blade. Tommy Kowalski, Vince recognized him now, a low-level enforcer for the rival Torino family, spun around. His face went white when he saw who had spoken. "Mr. Marcelli, she ruined my—" Tommy's bravado evaporated like smoke. "Did I ask you to speak?" Vince's green eyes were arctic. He crouched beside Isabella, offering his hand. "Miss, are you hurt?" Isabella looked up, and Vince felt something shift in his chest. Despite her bruised face and tear-stained cheeks, she was breathtakingly beautiful. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Deep brown pools filled not with the fear he expected, but with a fierce, intelligent defiance. "I'm fine," she whispered, though clearly she wasn't. She stared at his outstretched hand like it might bite her. "No, you're not." Vince gently helped her to her feet, his touch surprisingly tender for hands that had ended lives. "Marcus, escort Mr. Kowalski outside. Sal, call Dr. Chen." "Wait, you can't just—" Tommy started. Vince slowly turned. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I can't what exactly?" Tommy's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. Marcus and Sal moved in, their intentions crystal clear. Nothing, Mr. Marcelli, nothing at all." As his men handled the situation, Vince focused on Isabella. She was studying him with those remarkable eyes, and he realized she wasn't just beautiful. She was evaluating him, calculating. This wasn't some helpless victim. This was a woman with backbone. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly, dabbing at her lip with a cloth napkin. "Do what?" "Play the hero. I know who you are, Vincent Marcelli." The way she said his name sent an unexpected thrill through him. Most people either feared it or tried to use it. She spoke it like she was weighing its worth. "Then you know I don't play at anything." Isabella straightened her shoulders, meeting his gaze directly. Despite standing in the shadow of Vegas's most dangerous man, despite the blood on her face and the chaos around them, she lifted her chin with quiet dignity. "Thank you for helping me, but I don't need saving, especially not by someone like you." Before Vince could respond, she turned and walked toward the kitchen, her spine straight and proud. He watched her go, completely captivated. In 30 years of commanding fear and respect, no one had ever dismissed Vincent Marcelli. He found himself smiling for the first time in months. This was going to be interesting. 3 days had passed since the incident at Le Bernardin, and Vince couldn't get Isabella Rodriguez out of his head. He'd had Marcus run a discreet background check, 28 years old, nursing student at UNLV, worked 3 jobs to pay tuition, sent money home to her sick mother in Phoenix. Clean record, no connections to his world, which made her dismissal of him all the more intriguing. "You're distracted, boss." Tony Rossi, his oldest friend and underboss, slid into the opposite booth at their favorite coffee shop downtown. "Word is you've been asking about some Waitress." Vince didn't look up from his espresso. Word travels fast. When Vincent Marcelli starts playing knight in shining armor, yeah, it does. Tony's weathered face creased with concern. "What's this about, Vince? You've got the Torino situation heating up, the feds sniffing around our construction permits, and you're chasing some girl." "I'm not chasing anyone." But even as he said it, Vince knew it was a lie. He'd driven past Isabella's apartment building twice yesterday, had Marcus find out her schedule, even sent flowers to the restaurant, which she'd promptly donated to the children's hospital. "Right. That why you bought out her student loans?" Vince's head snapped up. "How did you—" "Because I've known you since we were 15, stealing cars in Queens. You get that look when you want something you can't have." Tony leaned forward. "This is dangerous territory, my friend. She's not from our world. Maybe that's exactly what I need. Or maybe it's what gets her killed." Tony's voice turned serious. "The Torinos are already pissed about the Tommy situation. You think they won't use her against you?" Before Vince could answer, his phone buzzed. "Marcus." "Boss, she's here." Vince looked up to see Isabella standing near the coffee shop entrance, scanning the room. She'd traded her restaurant uniform for jeans and a simple blue sweater that made her eyes look like melted chocolate. When she spotted him, her jaw set with determination. "Shit," Tony muttered, recognizing the look of a woman on a mission. Isabella approached their table with quick, purposeful steps. She slapped a cashier's check down in front of Vince, his exact payment for her student loans. "Take it back." Vince leaned back in his booth, genuinely impressed. Most people would have quietly accepted the money and disappeared. "Hello to you too, Isabella. It's Miss Rodriguez, and I said take it back. I heard you. I'm choosing to ignore you." He gestured to the empty space beside Tony. "Sit. Have some coffee." "I don't want your coffee, your money, or your charity." Her voice carried steel wrapped in silk. "I don't want anything from you." "Why not?" The simple question seemed to catch her off guard. She'd clearly prepared for an argument, not genuine curiosity. "Because I know what you are," she said finally. "What am I?" Isabella glanced around, noting the subtle way other patrons averted their eyes, how the barista's hands shook slightly as she watched their interaction. Everyone knew who Vincent Marcelli was. "You're a criminal, a killer. You hurt people for money." "Sometimes." Vince's honesty clearly surprised her. "But not you. Never you. How can you promise that? How can you promise anything when your whole life is built on violence?" Tony started to interject, but Vince held up a hand. This conversation was between him and Isabella, because for the first time in 20 years, I met someone who looked at me and saw a man instead of a monster, even for just a moment. Vince's voice was quiet, sincere. "Do you know what that's worth to someone like me?" Isabella's resolve wavered slightly. "That doesn't change what you do, who you are." "No, it doesn't. But maybe it changes who I could become." For a heartbeat, something soft flickered in her eyes. Then the walls went back up. "I don't believe in fairy tales, Mr. Marcelli. Bad men don't become good because a woman shows them kindness." She turned to leave, then paused. "And I won't be responsible for whatever you think you see in me." As she walked away, Vince felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, the sting of genuine rejection. Not fear-based compliance or calculating submission, real, honest dismissal. It should have angered him. Instead, it made him want her more. "You're in deep shit, my friend," Tony observed. Vince watched Isabella disappear into the Las Vegas crowd, her proud posture never faltering. "Yeah," he murmured, "I know." Isabella slammed her apartment door and leaned against it, her heart hammering against her ribs. What had she been thinking, confronting Vincent Marcelli like that? But when she discovered he'd paid off her student loans, $30,000 like it was pocket change, something inside her had snapped. She wouldn't be bought. Not by anyone, especially not by him. Her phone buzzed. A text from her roommate Sophia. "Working late again. Pizza in fridge. How was the coffee shop confrontation?" Isabella smiled despite herself. Sophia was the only person who knew about Vincent's assistance and her plan to return it. As a fellow nursing student, Sophia understood the struggle of working multiple jobs while maintaining grades. She also understood pride. Another buzz. This time an unknown number. The check is still on the table. V. Isabella deleted the message immediately. The next morning at Le Bernardin, the manager, Gerald pulled her aside before her shift. "Isabella, we need to talk." His usually stern face looked uncomfortable. "There's been interest in your employment here." Her stomach dropped. "What kind of interest?" "The kind that wears expensive suits and asks very polite questions about your schedule." Gerald wrung his hands. "Look, you're a good worker, but I can't have this establishment becoming some kind of battlefield. You're firing me. I'm suggesting you might want to consider other opportunities. Paid opportunities." He slid an envelope across his desk. "Someone left this for you." Inside was a job offer from Sunrise Medical Center, head nurse position in their pediatric ICU, starting salary that was triple what she made in a month at the restaurant. It was her dream job, one she'd applied for months ago and been told she wasn't experienced enough for. The signature at the bottom made her blood boil. Vincent Marcelli, board member. She didn't know he was on the hospital board. She didn't know he could make job offers appear out of thin air. She was learning that Vincent Marcelli's reach extended far beyond the criminal underworld everyone whispered about. That evening, Isabella found herself back at the coffee shop, fury driving her forward. This time Vincent sat alone. "What part of leave me alone don't you understand?" She slammed the job offer down next to yesterday's check. "The part where you keep coming back to tell me that." Vincent's green eyes held amusement. "Sit, Isabella, please. Stop manipulating my life. I'm trying to improve it. By taking away my choices, by forcing me into situations where I owe you." She was aware her voice was rising but couldn't stop herself. "This isn't kindness, it's control. You think I'm trying to control you?" Vincent's voice remained calm, which somehow made her angrier. "Aren't you? If I wanted to control you, I'd have had you kidnapped and locked in my penthouse." His matter-of-fact tone sent ice through her veins. "I'm offering you opportunities. Opportunities that disappear if I don't play along. The job offer is legitimate. The hospital genuinely needs someone with your skills and dedication. I simply expedited the process." Isabella stared at him, trying to understand the man behind the reputation. He was wearing a simple black sweater and jeans today, looking less like a crime boss and more like an attractive businessman. But she couldn't forget what those hands had done, what those eyes had seen. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why me? You could have any woman in this city." "I could buy any woman in this city," he corrected. "That's very different. And you think I'm different because I said no?" "I think you're different because when you looked at me that night, you saw someone worth saving." Vincent's voice dropped, becoming more vulnerable. "Do you know how long it's been since someone believed I was worth saving?" The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment, she glimpsed something beneath the dangerous exterior. Loneliness, regret, maybe even hope. "I didn't say you were worth saving. I said I didn't need you to save me." Same thing. Isabella felt her resolve wavering. This man was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with guns or violence. He was dangerous because he made her want to believe in possibilities she'd long ago abandoned. "Take the job, Isabella. Not because I offered it, but because you've earned it. Because those kids need someone who fights for them the way you fought that night." He stood, leaving money on the table for both their drinks. "And take the money too, not as payment or debt, but because sometimes good people deserve good things to happen to them." As he walked away, Isabella felt her careful walls beginning to crack. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. 2 weeks later, Isabella was beginning to understand why Vincent Marcelli was so successful at everything he did, including wearing down her resistance. He hadn't contacted her directly since their coffee shop confrontation, but his presence was everywhere. Flowers appeared at the hospital on her first day, with a card reading simply, "For the kids." When she asked the delivery man who sent them, he just shrugged. Anonymous donor. A food truck started parking outside the hospital during her lunch breaks, serving authentic Mexican cuisine that reminded her of home. The owner, an elderly man named Carlos, insisted everything was free for hospital staff. "Courtesy of a friend," he'd say with a knowing smile. When her car broke down, the mechanic called to say the repairs had been covered by a grateful patient's family. Isabella knew better, but she was tired of fighting battles she couldn't win. The final straw came on a snowy Thursday evening. Isabella emerged from the hospital after a 14-hour shift to find Vincent leaning against a sleek black Tesla, looking unfairly attractive in a charcoal wool coat. "Your ride's here," he said simply. "I can take the bus." "In this weather, in scrubs?" He gestured to the swirling snow. "Even your stubbornness has limits, Isabella." She was exhausted, freezing, and emotionally drained from losing a patient that day, a 7-year-old boy who'd fought cancer for 2 years. The sight of Vincent's warm car was almost overwhelming. "One ride," she said finally. "But we're not friends." Noted. The Tesla's interior was luxurious but understated. Heated leather seats, soft jazz playing, the subtle scent of his cologne. Vincent drove in comfortable silence for the first few minutes, seeming to sense her emotional state. "Rough day?" he asked finally. "We lost a patient, 7 years old." Isabella's voice was tight with grief. He loved dinosaurs, had every book about them in his room. Vincent's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry." "Are you? Do you actually feel sorry when children die? Or is that just something you say?" The question was cruel. But Isabella was hurting and lashing out. She expected anger, defensiveness. Instead, Vincent pulled over. 20 years ago, my sister Maria died of leukemia. She was 8. His voice was quiet, controlled. She loved horses. Had this beaten-up stuffed pony she carried everywhere, even to chemo sessions. Isabella felt her anger deflate. "Vincent, I built my first fortune selling drugs to pay for experimental treatments. Became everything my father warned me against. All for a little girl who died anyway." He turned to face her. "So yes, Isabella, I feel sorry when children die, more than you might imagine." The vulnerability in his confession broke something loose in her chest. This man had built an empire of violence, but it started with love, with desperation, with the same helpless fury she felt every time she lost a young patient. "I didn't know about your sister." "Most people don't. It's not exactly good for the reputation." They sat in silence, snow gathering on the windshield. Isabella studied Vincent's profile, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the dangerous crime boss or the manipulative benefactor, but a man who'd made terrible choices for comprehensible reasons. "The boy today," she said softly. "His name was Daniel. He wanted to be a paleontologist. Tell me about him." So she did. About Daniel's courage during treatments, his infectious laugh, the way he'd cheer up other kids on the ward. Vincent listened without interruption, his full attention focused on her words. "He sounds like he was lucky to have you," Vincent said when she finished. "I couldn't save him. But you gave him something precious while he was here." "I gave him someone who cared." Vincent's hand moved as if to touch hers, then stopped. "That matters, Isabella, more than you know." The warmth in his voice, the genuine understanding, made her feel less alone with her grief. For the first time since meeting him, Isabella wondered if there was more to Vincent Marcelli than the reputation suggested. "Why did you really help me that night?" she asked. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "Because watching someone hurt you made me remember who I used to be, before the anger, before the violence, when I still believed in protecting the innocent. And now? Now I'm wondering if it's too late to find that person again." Isabella looked at this complex, dangerous, surprisingly honest man, and felt something shift inside her. Not love, she wasn't that foolish, but maybe the beginning of understanding. "It's getting late," she said finally. Vincent nodded and pulled back into traffic, but the dynamic between them had changed irrevocably. They both felt it. Sir Vincent's phone rang at 3 a.m., jarring him from restless sleep. Only emergencies came at this hour. "Boss, we got a problem." Marcus's voice was tight with tension. "Someone torched the Rodriguez apartment building." Ice flooded Vincent's veins. "Isabella, she's alive at the hospital with smoke inhalation." "But bossy," Marcus paused. "This wasn't random. Someone wanted to send a message." 20 minutes later, Vincent burst through the hospital emergency room doors, still wearing sweatpants and a hastily pulled-on shirt. He found Isabella in bed, 3 oxygen masks over her face, eyes closed. Soot stained her beautiful skin, and her hands were bandaged from cuts. Sophia sat beside the bed, tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Marcelli? They said you were her emergency contact." Vincent's jaw clenched. He'd had that added to her hospital records weeks ago, knowing she had no family in Vegas. "What happened?" "Fire started around midnight. Bella got everyone out. Mrs. Chen from 2A, the Martinez family, even went back for that old man's cat." Sophia's voice was thick with admiration. "She breathes in too much smoke, but she saved 8 people. Of course she did." Isabella would never think of herself first. "The fire department said it was arson." Started in 3 places at once. Sophia's voice dropped. Who would do this? Vincent knew exactly who. The Torino family was sending a message. Back off, or watch innocent people burn. Sir? A doctor approached, chart in hand. Ms. Rodriguez is stable. Smoke inhalation, minor burns, but she'll recover fully. She's asking for you. Isabella's eyes opened as Vincent approached her bed. Even injured and exhausted, she managed to glare at him through the oxygen mask. Don't, she whispered when he pulled a chair close. Don't you dare blame yourself. 8 families lost their homes because of me. 8 families are alive because you weren't there to die with them. Her voice was hoarse but firm. Sophia told me what you did. Evacuation fund, temporary housing, new apartments. You don't get to play martyr when you're already playing hero. Vincent stared at her, amazed. Even now she was protecting him from his own guilt. Isabella, I need you to understand something. The people who did this won't stop. Being near me puts you in danger. So you're going to disappear? Make that choice for me too? I'm trying to keep you alive. Isabella struggled to sit up, pulling off the oxygen mask, despite the doctor's protests. Vincent Marcelli, I've spent 3 weeks watching you try to fix my life from the shadows. Paying my debts, creating opportunities, solving problems I didn't even know I had. You want to know what I think? Tell me. I think you're terrified that if you actually let me choose, I might choose you. Her eyes blazed with challenge. And that scares you more than any rival family ever could. The accusation hit like a physical blow. She was right, and they both knew it. You don't understand what you'd be choosing, Vincent said quietly. Then explain it to me. Stop protecting me from the truth, and let me decide if I can handle it. Before Vincent could respond, Tony burst through the curtain, his face grim. Boss, we need to go. Now. He glanced at Isabella apologetically. Sorry, miss, but Luca Torino just called a meeting. Says he wants to discuss terms. Terms for what? Isabella asked. Vincent and Tony exchanged looks. In the criminal world, terms usually meant one thing. He wants me to choose, Vincent said slowly. The family business or you? Isabella's face went pale. What happens if you choose me? War, Tony answered bluntly. Blood in the streets, innocent people caught in crossfire. And if you choose the business? Vincent couldn't meet her eyes. You disappear. New identity, new city, new life. Somewhere safe. Without you. Without me. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, processing the impossible situation. When she spoke, her voice was steady despite the tears in her eyes. How long do I have to decide? Bella? No, Sophia protested. You can't seriously be considering 48 hours, Vincent said. But Isabella, please understand. I understand perfectly. She reached for his hand, her touch sending electricity through him. I understand that loving someone means accepting all of them. The good, the bad, and the dangerous. Vincent's heart stopped. Loving. Isabella smiled through her tears. Did I forget to mention that part? I'm falling in love with you, Vincent Marcelli. Stupid, reckless, completely against my better judgment, but there it is. In the sterile hospital room, surrounded by monitors and the smell of antiseptic, Vincent Marcelli felt his carefully constructed world shift on its axis. Someone loved him. Not his power, not his money, not what he could do for them. Him, the man behind the monster. And now he had 48 hours to figure out how to keep her alive. Vincent paced his penthouse office like a caged lion, maps and surveillance photos spread across his mahogany desk. For 18 hours he'd been planning his response to Luca Torino's ultimatum, but every strategy led to the same conclusion. Someone he cared about would die. You could take the deal, Tony suggested from his position by the window. Get Isabella out of Vegas, set her up somewhere safe. Miami, Seattle, wherever she wants. And spend the rest of my life wondering if she's truly safe or just well hidden. Vincent's voice was harsh with exhaustion. The Torinos have long memories, Tony. They'll never stop looking for ways to hurt me. Then we go to war, take them down permanently. With how many casualties? How many innocent people die while we settle our differences? Vincent slammed his hand on the desk. I've seen enough blood, Tony. I won't add Isabella's to it. Marcus entered without knocking, a liberty he only took during emergencies. Boss, you need to see this. He handed over a tablet showing security footage from the hospital. Isabella, still in her patient gown and connected to an IV, was walking purposefully down a corridor. When was this taken? 20 minutes ago. She checked herself out AMA, against medical advice, said she had somewhere to be. Vincent's blood turned to ice. Where? That's the problem, boss. She's not going home. GPS shows her heading toward Torino territory. What? Vincent was already reaching for his jacket. Get the car now. Vince, wait. Tony grabbed his arm. This could be a trap. What if they took her? Then I'll kill them all. And if she went willingly? If she's trying to solve this herself? That possibility was even worse. Vincent knew Isabella's fierce independence, her refusal to let others fight her battles. She was brave enough, and stubborn enough, to confront the Torino family directly. The drive to Torino territory took 23 minutes that felt like hours. Vincent's mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Isabella didn't understand the rules of his world. She didn't know that showing weakness to predators like Luca Torino was often fatal. They found her car parked outside Torino's restaurant, a modest Italian place that served as the family's front operation. Through the window, Vincent could see Isabella sitting across from Luca himself, a thin man in his 60s with dead eyes and hands that had strangled 3 men personally. She's talking to him, Marcus observed unnecessarily. She's negotiating with a killer, Vincent corrected, his voice deadly quiet. Vincent walked through the restaurant's front door like he owned it. Conversations stopped, patrons scattered, and Luca's bodyguards reached for their weapons before recognizing him. Vincent, Luca smiled, but his eyes remained cold. Right on time. Your girlfriend and I were just having the most interesting conversation. Isabella turned, and Vincent's heart nearly stopped. She looked fragile in her civilian clothes, pale from her injuries, but her spine was straight and her jaw set with determination. Isabella, get away from him. Now. Actually, she came to me, Luca said, gesturing for Vincent to sit, with quite an interesting proposal. What proposal? Isabella spoke before Luca could answer. I offered him something he wants more than revenge against you. There's nothing you could possibly have that— Information, Luca interrupted, his smile widening, about certain suspicious financial transactions involving hospital board donations and money laundering. Information that could bring down not just you, Vincent, but expose your methods of cleaning dirty money through charitable contributions. Vincent felt the ground shift beneath him. Isabella doesn't have access to— Hospital board members leave quite a paper trail, Vincent. Financial records, donation sources, suspicious cash flows through charitable foundations. Isabella's voice was steady, but he could see the fear in her eyes. Amazing what passes through a children's hospital's accounting department when a board member uses it to launder money. You're bluffing, Vincent said, but doubt crept into his voice. Am I? Luca leaned back in his chair. Your little nurse has been quite resourceful. Accessing files, making copies, gathering evidence. She claims she can deliver enough financial evidence to keep the feds busy investigating your money laundering operation through hospital donations for the next 5 years. Vincent stared at Isabella in horror. You went through my board member financial records. I did what I had to do to protect you. Her voice cracked slightly. To protect us. By accessing confidential financial documents. By exposing my money laundering methods. By choosing you. Isabella's composure finally broke. You gave me 48 hours to decide between loving you and staying safe. Well, here's my answer. I choose you, Vincent. I choose us. Whatever the cost. The restaurant fell silent except for the soft jazz playing overhead. Vincent felt something break open in his chest. Terror and love and admiration all tangled together. Here's my counter-proposal, Luca said, clearly enjoying the drama. The girl gives me the financial evidence about your money laundering through hospital donations. You both walk away alive, and we call this whole unpleasant business settled. And if we refuse, then you have a war to fight, and she has a very short life expectancy. Vincent looked at Isabella, brave, brilliant, impossibly stubborn Isabella, and saw his future reflected in her eyes, not the future he'd planned, built on power and fear, but something entirely different, something worth the risk. No deal, Vincent said quietly. Vincent, Isabella started. No deal, he repeated, louder this time. Because here's what you don't understand, Luca. She's not just some woman I'm protecting. She's the woman I love. And I'll burn this entire city down before I let you touch her. Luca's smile faltered. You're making a mistake, Vincent. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Vincent stood, offering Isabella his hand. Come on, we have a war to plan. As they walked out together, Isabella squeezed his fingers tight. You realize I actually do have some of those financial records, she whispered. I figured. How much trouble are we in? The federal money laundering kind. Vincent couldn't help but smile. I knew I loved you for a reason. Behind them, Luca Torino watched them leave and reached for his phone. The war for Isabella Rodriguez's heart was over, but the real war was just beginning. The war began at dawn. Vincent's phone buzzed with reports as he sat in his fortified penthouse, Isabella beside him despite his protests. 3 of his legitimate businesses hit simultaneously: the construction company, the restaurant chain, and his shipping warehouse. Professional jobs, no casualties, but the message was clear. Luca Torino meant business. 15 million in damages, Marcus reported grimly. They hit the cement plant too, but we got most of the crew out. Isabella studied the surveillance photos spread across Vincent's desk, her nurse's training making her methodical even in chaos. He's targeting your legal operations. Why not hit your other businesses? Because he wants to prove he can hurt me without getting his hands dirty, Vincent explained. The legal businesses are harder to defend, easier to explain to law enforcement. Tony burst through the office doors, his face dark with rage. Boss, they took Angela. Vincent's blood turned to ice. Angela Rossi was Tony's 19-year-old daughter, a freshman at NYU studying art history. She had nothing to do with the family business. When? 2 hours ago. Grabbed her outside her dorm, left this. Tony threw a burner phone on the desk. Vincent answered on the first ring. Luca's voice was sickeningly pleasant. Vincent, I trust you received my morning gifts. Let the girl go, Luca. She's innocent. So was my nephew Tommy before your pet nurse got him arrested. Luca's voice hardened. Here's how this works. You have 12 hours to deliver the hospital information and Isabella Rodriguez to my warehouse on Flamingo Road. Or sweet little Angela learns what happens to girls who get in the way of business. The line went dead. Vincent looked at Tony's stricken face, then at Isabella's pale but determined expression. I'm going, Isabella said quietly. Like hell you are. Vincent, she's 19 years old. She has a whole life ahead of her. So do you. Vincent's control finally snapped. You think I can just hand you over to that psychopath? You think I can live knowing I traded your life for someone else's? You think I can live knowing a girl died because I was too selfish to save her? Isabella's voice matched his intensity. This isn't about noble sacrifice, Vincent. This is about math. 1 life for 1 life. Your life is worth more than... to you, but not to her father. Isabella gestured toward Tony, who was staring out the window with dead eyes. Not to her mother, and not to me. Vincent felt his world tilting. In 42 years of making impossible decisions, he'd never faced a choice that could destroy him regardless of the outcome. There has to be another way, he said desperately. Maybe there is. Isabella moved to the desk studying building schematics Marcus had pulled up. What if we don't play by Luca's rules? What if we make our own? What are you thinking? I'm thinking you're Vincent Marcelli. You didn't build an empire by accepting other people's terms. Isabella's eyes blazed with fierce intelligence. You built it by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than everyone else, so stop reacting to Luca's moves and start making your own. Vincent stared at her, seeing not just the woman he loved, but a true partner, someone who understood both his world and his heart. Marcus, get me blueprints for every building Luca owns. Tony, call in all our allies, Benedetto, Kozlov, even Nakamura if necessary, and someone get me a secure line to FBI agent Chen. The feds? Tony looked shocked. If Luca wants to play dirty, he's about to learn what dirty really looks like. Vincent pulled Isabella close, pressing his forehead against hers. You sure you're ready for this? Once we start, there's no going back to your normal life. Normal was overrated anyway, Isabella whispered. Besides, someone has to keep you from getting yourself killed. For the first time since this nightmare began, Vincent smiled. 12 hours, Luca, he murmured. Let's see what we can accomplish in 12 hours. Outside, Las Vegas glittered in the morning sun, oblivious to the war being planned in the shadows above. Vincent began making calls, each conversation short and decisive. Old debts were called in, favors demanded, alliances forged. Isabella watched him work. Isabella, seeing the calculated precision that had made him legendary. This wasn't the tender man who'd comforted her about losing a patient. This was Vincent Marcelli at his most dangerous, and somehow that made her love him even more. The game was changing, and Vincent Marcelli was about to remind Las Vegas why he'd survived 20 years at the top. Alersta agent Sarah Chen sat across from Vincent in a downtown FBI office, her expression carefully neutral. At 35, she'd built her career bringing down organized crime families, but she'd never had a Mafia boss volunteer information. "You're offering to testify against the Torino money laundering operation in exchange for protection for Miss Rodriguez," she summarized. "And immunity for any federal crimes she may have committed accessing hospital records," Vincent added, "plus witness protection for Angela Rossi. What makes you think the Torinos are money laundering?" Vincent slid a thick folder across the table. "Bank records, property transfers, shell company documentation. 3 years of investigation my people have been conducting." Agent Chen's eyebrows rose as she flipped through the evidence. "This is comprehensive. Why haven't you used this before?" "Because taking down Luca would have destabilized the entire Vegas underworld. Better the devil you know." Vincent's voice was matter-of-fact, but he crossed a line when he threatened innocent women. "And you expect me to believe Vincent Marcelli suddenly grew a conscience? I expect you to believe Vincent Marcelli fell in love with someone who has one." Isabella watched from the observation room as Vincent laid out his proposal. It was surreal, seeing the man she loved calmly discussing federal prosecution strategies with the FBI, but there was something beautiful about it too. Vincent choosing justice over revenge, protection over power. 2 hours later, they emerged with a deal. The FBI would raid Luca's operations simultaneously, while Vincent's people extracted Angela. Isabella would be placed in protective custody until Luca was neutralized. "I don't like the custody part," Isabella said as they walked to Vincent's car. "It's temporary. Once Luca's in federal prison, if the raids work, if Angela's still alive, if Luca doesn't have contingency plans." Isabella stopped walking. "Vincent, there are too many variables, too many things that could go wrong." "Then what do you suggest?" "I suggest we control the variables. We give Luca exactly what he wants." "Isabella, me, but not helpless, not unprepared. We give him me with a plan." Vincent's face went dark. "Absolutely not. Listen to me. Luca expects you to either cave and hand me over or try some dramatic rescue. He's not expecting me to walk in voluntarily with my own agenda. Because it's insane. Because it's unexpected. You taught me that being unexpected is the most powerful weapon we have." They argued for 20 minutes in the parking garage, their voices echoing off concrete walls. Finally, Isabella played her trump card. "Vincent, do you trust me?" The simple question stopped him cold. "With my life." "Then trust me with my own." 4 hours later, Isabella walked into Luca's warehouse, wearing a wire so sophisticated, the FBI tech team had needed 30 minutes to explain how it worked. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice was steady when she called out, "I'm here, Luca. Let Angela go." Luca emerged from the shadows, flanked by 6 armed men. Angela sat tied to a chair in the center of the warehouse, tears streaming down her face but otherwise unharmed. "Where's Vincent?" "Licking his wounds. Turns out he's not as willing to sacrifice himself for love as I thought." Isabella's performance was flawless, just the right amount of bitterness and resignation. "And the hospital information?" Isabella held up a flash drive. "Everything you wanted. Financial records, donation sources, money laundering evidence. Enough to expose Vincent's methods and bury his operation." Luca's smile was genuinely pleased. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Smart enough to know when I'm beaten." Isabella looked at Angela. "Let her go. And it's yours." "I think not. Insurance policies are so important in business. Don't you agree?" Isabella's blood chilled, but she'd expected this. Luca had never intended to honor his deal completely. "Then I guess we have a problem," she said calmly. "Do we?" "Because Vincent Marcelli doesn't negotiate with people who break their word." Isabella smiled, and for the first time, Luca looked uncertain. "Did you really think I came here alone?" The warehouse lights cut out simultaneously. In the darkness, Isabella heard Luca scream orders, his men scrambling for position. But Vincent's people had spent 3 hours studying this warehouse, planning for every contingency. When the lights came back on, Luca found himself surrounded by Vincent's crew, and Vincent himself was cutting Angela's bonds. "Game over, Luca," Vincent said quietly. Isabella pulled the wire from her shirt, knowing the FBI was already on their way. "Actually," she said, meeting Luca's horrified eyes, "it's just beginning." The FBI raid made front-page news across Nevada. 16 Torino family members arrested, including Luca himself, charged with money laundering, extortion and kidnapping. The evidence Vincent provided was airtight, built from years of careful documentation, but victory came with a price. 3 families have put contracts out on you, Tony reported grimly. Word is you're a snitch, a Fed collaborator. The old rules don't protect you anymore. Vincent stood at his penthouse window, watching FBI agents carry boxes from the building across the street, another Torino front business being dismantled. How many allies do we have left? Maybe half. The others are waiting to see which way the wind blows. Isabella emerged from the bedroom. Her hospital scrubs traded for jeans and Vincent's sweater. She'd officially resigned from Le Bernardin and taken a leave of absence from the hospital until the federal investigation concluded. Any word from Agent Chen? She asked. Luca's not talking, but his lieutenants are singing like birds. Should be enough to put him away for life. Vincent turned from the window. But that doesn't solve our immediate problem. Which is? Every other crime family in the country now sees me as a liability, someone who'll turn to the feds when things get tough. Vincent's voice was heavy with exhaustion. I spent 20 years building a reputation and destroyed it in one night. To save Angela, to save me. Isabella moved to his side. No regrets? About saving you? Never. Vincent pulled her close. About the rest of it? I'm still figuring that out. The next few weeks fell into a strange routine. Vincent's legitimate businesses continued operating, but his criminal enterprises gradually dissolved as allies distanced themselves. Some days felt almost normal. Grocery shopping, quiet dinners, Isabella studying for her nursing boards. Other days brought reminders of their precarious situation. Strange cars parked outside, hang-up phone calls, friends who stopped returning Vincent's calls. We could leave, Isabella suggested one evening over Chinese takeout. Start over somewhere new. You've got enough money to disappear forever, and spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, never knowing if today's the day someone finds us. Vincent shook his head. That's not living, Isabella. That's just surviving. So, what do you want to do? Vincent was quiet for a long moment, considering. I want to find out who I am when I'm not Vincent Marcelli, crime boss. I want to discover if the man you fell in love with can exist without all the power and fear and violence. And if he can't, then at least we'll know we tried. 2 months after Luca's arrest, Vincent made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. He called a meeting with the heads of the remaining Vegas families, not to negotiate, but to announce his retirement. Effective immediately, I'm out, he told the assembled crime bosses. My territories, my operations, my contacts, it's all yours to divvy up however you see fit. Salvatore Benedetto, the oldest of the group, leaned forward. Vincent, you don't just retire from this life, you know that. I'm not retiring from the life, Sal. I'm retiring from the business. There's a difference. The contracts will stand until I do something that threatens your operations. But I won't. Isabella and I are going legitimate. Completely. We're not a threat to anyone anymore. And if we don't believe you, Vincent's green eyes hardened slightly, a reminder of who he'd been. Then you'll have to decide if killing a man who helped put Luca Torino in federal prison is worth the FBI attention it'll bring. It was a masterful play, using his cooperation with law enforcement as both weakness and shield. The other bosses exchanged glances, calculating risks and benefits. 6 months, Benedetto said finally. You have 6 months to prove you're really out. After that, we reassess. Vincent nodded. Fair enough. Walking out of that meeting, Vincent felt lighter than he had in years. For the first time since his father's death, his future wasn't predetermined by violence and power. How do you feel? Isabella asked as they drove home. Terrified, Vincent admitted, but also free. Free to be who? Vincent considered the question seriously. I have no idea, but I'm looking forward to finding out. Isabella smiled, taking his hand. We'll figure it out together. For the first time in months, Vincent Marcelli believed that might actually be possible. But in the shadows of Las Vegas, not everyone was ready to let the past go, and some threats came from unexpected directions. Nochi-san, the revelation came on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, 3 months into Vincent's retirement. Isabella was at the hospital for her nursing board exams when Agent Chen called with news that changed everything. We found something in Luca's personal files, Chen said without preamble. Something about your father's murder. Vincent went cold. What kind of something? The kind that suggests everything you thought you knew about that night was wrong. Can you come in? 2 hours later, Vincent sat in the same FBI conference room where he'd made his deal with Chen, staring at documents that rewrote his entire history. According to Luca's records, your father wasn't killed by the Kozlov family, Chen explained. He was killed by someone in your own organization, someone who wanted to eliminate him before he could testify in a federal investigation. Vincent's world tilted. That's impossible. My father would never... Your father was an FBI informant, Vincent. Had been for 3 years before his death. The Torinos found out and eliminated him before he could bring down half the crime families in New York. The documents blurred in front of Vincent's eyes. Police reports, witness statements, federal communications, all painting a picture that contradicted everything he'd believed for 22 years. Joseph Marcelli was trying to get out, Chen continued gently. He was providing information to reduce his sentence and enter witness protection. The plan was to take you and your sister Maria away from the life entirely. Vincent remembered that night with crystal clarity, his father's tense phone calls, the unusual security precautions, the way he'd kept checking the locks. At 20, Vincent had assumed it was standard family business paranoia. Who killed him? Chen slid another file across the table. Vincent's hands shook as he opened it. Salvatore Benedetto, the man who'd become like a second father to Vincent after the murder. The man who'd guided his rise through the ranks, who'd taught him everything about loyalty and honor, and the importance of family. The man who'd shot Vincent's father in the head and let him believe it was enemy action for over 2 decades. Sal made sure you'd take over the family business, made sure you'd become everything your father was trying to escape, Chen said quietly. He used your grief and anger to build his own power base. Vincent felt something break inside him, not his heart, but something deeper, the foundation of his identity, the core beliefs that had shaped every decision for 20 years. There's more, Chen said reluctantly. Benedetto's been funding the contracts on your life. He wants you dead before you discover the truth about your father. Vincent stood abruptly, his chair clattering backward. I need to go. Vincent, wait. We can protect you. From the man who's been like a father to me for 20 years. From the family I've bled for? Vincent's laugh was bitter. Agent Chen, I just learned that my entire adult life has been a lie. Protection isn't what I need right now. Vincent drove aimlessly through Las Vegas, his mind reeling. Every memory of Sal felt tainted now. The guidance, the trust, the apparent loyalty. Had any of it been real or just manipulation designed to turn Vincent into a weapon? His phone rang. Isabella. Vincent, where are you? Chen called and said, My father was trying to get out, Vincent said without preamble. He was going to testify against everyone, including Sal, and Sal killed him for it. Silence on the other end. Then, come home. Isabella, I don't know who I am anymore. Everything I thought I knew. Come home, she repeated firmly. We'll figure it out together. Vincent found Isabella waiting in their penthouse, her nursing exam forgotten. She didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. She simply held him while 20 years of carefully constructed identity crumbled around him. What do I do? He asked finally. What your father would have wanted you to do, Isabella said quietly. What the man you're becoming would do. And what's that? You stop running from the truth. You stop letting other people define who you are. Isabella pulled back to look at him. And you decide what Vincent Marcelli stands for when no one else is pulling the strings. Vincent thought about his father, not the crime boss he'd tried to emulate, but the man who'd wanted to escape the life for his children's sake, the man who died trying to do the right thing. I know what I have to do, Vincent said finally. Whatever it is, I'm with you. Vincent looked at this extraordinary woman who'd changed everything about his life, who'd shown him possibilities he'd never imagined, even if it means testifying against Sal, destroying what's left of the only family I've ever known. Family doesn't kill your father and lie about it for 20 years, Isabella said fiercely. Family doesn't put contracts on your life. You want to know what family is? Tell me. Family is choosing to love someone even when it's dangerous. Family is building something new instead of being trapped by something old. Isabella's eyes blazed with conviction. Your father tried to get out for you and Maria. Now you can get out for us. Vincent felt something settle in his chest. Not peace, but purpose. For the first time in his adult life, he knew exactly who he wanted to be. Call Agent Chen, he said. Tell her we're ready to finish what my father started. Outside, Las Vegas glittered in the desert sun, but Vincent Marcelli was no longer looking back at the shadows of his past. He was finally ready to step into the light. The next 72 hours moved with the precision of a military operation. Agent Chen coordinated with federal prosecutors, while Vincent provided 20 years of evidence against Salvatore Benedetto and his organization. Bank records, murder contracts, detailed accounts of crimes that stretched from New York to Nevada. "This is enough to bring down the entire East Coast operation," Chen said, reviewing Vincent's testimony. "But you understand what this means. Once this goes public, there's no going back. You'll be marked for life." "I've been marked since I decided to save Isabella," Vincent replied. "At least now I'm fighting for something instead of running from it." Isabella spent those 3 days making her own preparations. She'd passed her nursing boards and been offered a position at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, far from Vegas, far from the past, but close enough to the life they wanted to build together. The hardest part was saying goodbye to the few people in Vincent's world who genuinely cared about him. "Are you sure about this?" Tony asked, standing in Vincent's office for what would be the last time. "Once you testify, there's no coming back to the life." "I was never meant for this life, Tony. It took me 20 years to realize that." Vincent clasped his oldest friend's shoulder. "My father tried to get out. I'm finishing what he started. And us, the crew, you're good men who chose a bad profession. Find something better." Vincent's voice was firm but not unkind. "The feds are offering immunity deals for anyone willing to cooperate. Take them." Tony nodded slowly. "What about Sal?" Vincent's expression hardened. "Sal made his choice 22 years ago when he put a bullet in my father's head. Now he gets to live with the consequences." The arrest happened at dawn on a Thursday. Federal agents hit Benedetto properties simultaneously across 3 states, coordinated raids that netted 47 arrests, including Sal himself. Vincent watched from a safe house as news cameras captured his former mentor being led away in handcuffs. Sal looked directly at the camera, and Vincent knew the message was meant for him. "This isn't over." "How long before trial?" Isabella asked Agent Chen. 6 months minimum. Vincent's testimony is crucial, but we need time to build the complete case. Chen's expression was serious. "Until then, you're both in witness protection. New identities, new location, 24-hour security." "Where?" Vincent asked. "Small town in Oregon. Population 8,000, surrounded by mountains. About as far from Las Vegas as we can get you while staying in the continental U.S. Vincent looked at Isabella, seeing his own mix of excitement and terror reflected in her eyes. They were about to disappear entirely, become completely different people. "When do we leave?" "Tonight." The final goodbye was with Marcus, who'd chosen to stay with the crew rather than cooperate with federal authorities. "You sure you won't take the immunity deal?" Vincent asked. "This life chose me as much as I chose it, boss. Too late to change now." Marcus's weathered face was sad but resolute. "But you were always meant for something better. Take care of the crew. The ones who want out, help them find it. And the ones who don't. That's their choice to make." That evening, Vincent Marcelli and Isabella Rodriguez ceased to exist. In their place, Michael and Sarah Chen, names chosen to honor the agent who'd given them this chance, boarded a private plane to Portland, Oregon. As Las Vegas disappeared below them, Isabella took Vincent's hand. "Any regrets?" Vincent considered the question seriously. Behind them lay 20 years of power, fear, and violence. Ahead lay complete uncertainty. New names, new lives, new possibilities. "Only one," he said finally. "What's that?" "That it took me this long to realize what really mattered." Isabella smiled, squeezing his fingers. "We have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. Think it'll be enough? Ask me in 50 years. The plane climbed into the star-filled sky, carrying them toward a future neither had imagined possible 6 months ago. Below, Las Vegas continued its eternal dance of lights and shadows, but Vincent no longer belonged to either. For the first time in his adult life, he belonged only to himself, and to the woman who'd shown him that love was stronger than fear, that choosing the right path was more important than choosing the easy one. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new identities to learn, new lives to build, but tonight, Vincent Marcelli was free, and that was enough. 6 months later, Michael Chen stood in a federal courthouse in Las Vegas, wearing a simple gray suit instead of his usual Armani. The man who'd once commanded an empire through fear and violence was about to bring down another one through truth and justice. The courtroom was packed. Media, federal agents, families of victims, and members of various crime organizations, all watching as Vincent Marcelli testified against the man who'd been like a father to him. "State your name for the record," the prosecutor requested. "Vincent Michael Marcelli. And your relationship to the defendant, Salvatore Benedetto?" Vincent looked across the courtroom at Sal, who sat impassively at the defense table. Their eyes met, and Vincent saw no remorse, no acknowledgement of the betrayal that had shaped both their lives. "He was my mentor, my surrogate father after my real father was murdered." Vincent's voice was steady, clear, and he was the man who ordered that murder. The testimony took 3 days. Vincent laid out 22 years of evidence, not just about his father's death, but about the web of violence and corruption that Sal had built, using Vincent's grief and loyalty. Bank records, recorded conversations, detailed accounts of murders and extortion that painted a comprehensive picture of organized crime's reach. Isabella, Sarah Chen in the court records, watched from the gallery, her face a mask of calm support. But Vincent could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands clenched whenever the defense attorney tried to attack his credibility. "Mr. Marcelli," the defense attorney said during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you're testifying here today only to reduce your own criminal liability?" "No." "You expect this jury to believe you've had a sudden attack of conscience after 20 years of criminal activity?" Vincent looked at Isabella, drawing strength from her presence. "I expect this jury to understand that sometimes it takes 20 years to realize you've been living someone else's dream instead of your own." "And what is your dream, Mr. Marcelli?" For the first time during his testimony, Vincent smiled. "To be the man my father wanted me to become before Sal Benedetto killed him. To honor his memory by choosing justice over revenge, truth over power." The jury deliberated for 18 hours. When they returned, Vincent and Isabella sat in the front row, hands clasped, waiting for a verdict that would determine not just Sal's fate, but their own future. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Joseph Marcelli, we find the defendant guilty. Vincent felt 22 years of grief and anger finally begin to release. His father's murder had been avenged, not through violence, but through justice. The additional charges, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, all came back guilty. Sal Benedetto was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. As the courtroom emptied, Sal was led past Vincent's row. The old man stopped, leaning close enough to whisper, "You'll never be safe. My people have long memories." "So do mine," Vincent replied quietly. "The difference is, mine remember why we fight." Agent Chen met them outside the courthouse. "It's over. Benedetto's organization is finished and your testimony helped convict 43 others. You're free to reclaim your real names and lives." "What about the threats?" Isabella asked. "With Sal's conviction, most of his allies will distance themselves. The contracts on Vincent's life were personal vendetta, not business. Without Sal's backing, they're not worth the risk." Vincent nodded, understanding the criminal calculus, even as he prepared to leave it behind forever. "What now?" Isabella asked as they walked down the courthouse steps. "Now we go home. To Oregon? To wherever you are." They'd spent 6 months in a small town called Oak Ridge, living as Michael and Sarah Chen. Vincent had worked construction while Isabella volunteered at the local clinic. It was the first honest work of Vincent's adult life, and he'd discovered he was good at building things instead of destroying them. "The hospital in Portland offered me a position," Isabella said. "Head pediatric nurse, good salary, excellent benefits." "And what did you tell them?" "That I needed to discuss it with my husband." Vincent stopped walking. "Husband?" Isabella laughed at his expression. "Well, we've been living together for 6 months. We've faced federal prosecution together. And you've seen me without makeup at 6 in the morning. If that's not marriage, what is? I believe marriage traditionally involves a proposal, a ring, and a ceremony." "Is that a fact?" Isabella's eyes danced with mischief. Vincent looked at this extraordinary woman who'd changed everything about his life, who'd shown him that love was stronger than fear, that the future was more important than the past. Right there on the courthouse steps, with federal agents and media still milling around, Vincent Marcelli dropped to one knee. "Isabella Rodriguez, will you marry me? Not because it's convenient or strategic or safe, but because I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person." "Are you sure?" "Because I come with student loans, family drama, and a tendency to make really poor decisions about who I fall in love with. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Isabella's smile lit up the Las Vegas morning. "Then yes, Vincent Marcelli, I'll marry you." As Vincent slipped a simple diamond ring onto her finger, one he'd bought weeks ago in Oregon, hoping for exactly this moment, Isabella leaned down to kiss him. "So what happens now?" she whispered against his lips. "Now we go build the life we choose instead of the one that was chosen for us. Together? Always together." 6 months later, Michael and Sarah Chen were married in a small ceremony in Portland, Oregon. The bride was a pediatric nurse at the Children's Hospital. The groom ran a successful construction company that specialized in building homes for first-time buyers. Their past was behind them. Their future stretched ahead, bright with possibility. And Vincent Marcelli finally understood what his father had been trying to tell him all those years ago. The most important thing a man could build wasn't an empire. It was a life worth living, with someone worth living it for.